Well, hello everybody, and welcome yet again to this week's edition of the Inworld Review. According to my calendar, because I can't trust myself, it is the 13th. Lucky or unlucky, I don't know. It's the 13th of June of the grand old year 2015. And we're coming to you as is normal. We were in Second Life last week, of course, but we're now back here out on the hypergrid from our headquarters studios over on the Great Canadian Grid. Um, Now, we're plenty of news to discuss this week, no doubt, as we go into things. But the first thing I'm going to do before reading out headlines and things like that is let you know who we've got in the studio here. We've got me, of course, and we also have, as ever, Tara Yates. Welcome, Tara.
Thank you, Mel.
And from Hypergrid Business, of course, we are also joined by Maria Koroloff.
Always a pleasure being here, Mel.
And I've got to be careful here with our pronunciation. I've been practicing, but I'm not sure I'm there yet. But we are joined by the CEO of Kitely. This is obviously Kitely the Grid and Kitely the Marketplace, and that's none other than Ilan Tochner. I believe I've got it right.
Yeah, you did, Mal.
Wonderful. Well, welcome to the show, Ilan.
My pleasure.
Now, we'll start as we always do by just running through various highlights that we have around. And Ilan, do feel welcome to butt in if when we read out any item or whatever and opinionate on it, and you've got any thoughts on that, and we'll move on to Kindly itself a little bit later. So I'm starting with my own Twitter feed, which half the time goes to Hyperical or Hypergood Business anyway, but I'm going to do my best to pinpoint the ones that don't and let Maria handle the others. One of Maria's this morning, in fact, was Star Wars are coming to virtual reality, but I'll let her talk about that. Our good friends at Nick Nitham at K0 Worldwide have a new one of their sort of quarterly reports out today. It's quarter 2 2015 update on the VR hardware radar. And it's not only a report, but it's full of those wonderful charts that Nick does. And I can't give you a direct link because it came via my Scoop It feed. But if you want any of the links I'm talking about, I forgot to say, go to twitter.com/Malburns, MALBURNS, all one word, and you can follow the links from there. There was another rather offbeat one that I found earlier. It was yesterday, in fact. I found it from a site called the Art World Market Report. And they actually have papers. They have a little summary article, but then you can actually download or read some papers they've got there, described as papers on documentation and archiving of virtual creations. It's all written by a chap called Dennis Moser, who, to be honest, I've never heard of, but no doubt. The metaverse and the real world is one very big place. You can't keep tabs on anybody. I haven't actually read the articles mentioned, but they do sound sort of interesting in terms of, archiving. We all know how transient virtual worlds can be, not only platforms disappearing, but even within really healthy environments. People have art installations on up for 3 months, then they take them down, and unless people like us have filmed them or they've been backed up on some evidence in privately somewhere, things can get lost. So archiving is very interesting to me anyway. Oculus announcement about the Rift headset. It is coming. I was contacted on Twitter in the week, shortly after the Oculus live stream thing by somebody who'd been twittering from the event. He'd actually put one of these things on and was remarking on how lightweight it was. Another article said, well, finally, the Oculus Rift is actually taking on the sort of feeling of a baseball cap, if not smart glasses. I took one look at the photo and I said, that doesn't look like any baseball cap I've ever seen, but I guess if it's lightweight enough, that's what they're getting at. And it does actually seem to come with integrated headphones and various gadgets now, and it will be apparently shipping for those who want it with, believe it or not, Microsoft's Xbox controller, which seems to be their preferred interfacing device to go with your helmet, or whatever they're calling it these days. Virtual reality gym brings about the benefits after a stressful workout. Yes, indeed it does. 3rd November at Pings from the Afterlife, .blogspot.com. That's Pings, P-I-N-G-S, from the Afterlife, all one word. As opposed on last week's Safari, really rather quite a long one. She has announced she won't be doing them for a few weeks, but they'll still be continuing because Fuchsia Nightfire and Wizard Oz Chrome will be handling stuff for Thursday Universe. I guess she's having a summer holiday or something. Let's see, a lot of new places advertised destinations-wise. It's Hyperica, which is Maria's site, of course, Mystic Rivers, River City, etc. And Maria posted an article which she'll no doubt mentioned about how to file DMCA takedowns with How's a Lawyer being needed. Yes, indeed. And Ilan will love this one, actually. Again, I can't give you the exact link, but somebody posted a blog during the week saying, I couldn't resist. I'm exploring Kitely. Yes, a virtual world. And I got some credit there too, because I think I'd mentioned it in Google Plus or something. Whoever this blogger was, they read something I posted on Kitely, it seems, and they're in there and enthusing about it. So good to give enthusiasm on anything to do with OpenSim, really. 11 apps to introduce people to VR. I suspect that was. Oh no, that's by Kim Boa. Okay. So 11 apps to introduce you to VR. That may be from, I don't think it is from Maria, is it? So it's World to VR. I don't know, but you can get a link. One that Maria will tell us about is Glove One, Kickstarter. High Fidelity has updated users with a quarterly report. If you're in the High Fidelity Alpha on their mailing list, they sent out a quarterly report during the week to keep you up to date on everything that's going on. Museum of the Metaverse, that's Maria again. So yeah, down the list, Maria. Brela Sana Gallery. I can't remember that. I think that's a gallery opening, and it looks like it's in Scoopit, so that's probably not from Maria. Down again. Here we go. Oh, and now I'm getting into the feedback from last week. So really, that's just the main things that Maria doesn't already have from my Twitter feed. So without further ado. Actually, before I start, because I'm going to forget it otherwise, many of you would know that when we do the first Saturday of every month from Second Life, as indeed in the old days we did regularly, Tara here does a little feature called Show and Tell. And I've done a little one of my own today, and I can't actually see what I'm about to talk about, so Tara's kind of volunteered to help me out. But if we swing over to the next stage, I just thought it'd be a nice idea if I come across anything during the week and pick it up, if I dump it on the stage just for curiosity. And I've got 3 items here. They're actually all for free, and I will stick them downstairs and leave them on the stage here at some point. So if you're around and want to pop in, you'll be able to grab a copy. The one in the middle is a strange creature. I've already forgotten what it's called, but no doubt Tara will tell us.
It's a shoulder pad. In just a minute, I'm going to have to zoom in again because, of course, I didn't make a note about it is a hippocampus shoulder pad. There we go.
A hippocampus shoulder pad. Okay. Well, I did try this on, cute as he is, but you'll notice it's on a sort of floating platform of water, and that is actually part of the shoulder pad. You can't unlink it or do anything with it. So when you actually put it on your shoulder, that sort of rotating platform of water hangs out a shoulder lens away from you, and the shoulder pad himself is where you see him, so he's not really on your shoulder at all. But as you see, he's visible and scalable, and if you like funny, weird critters and stuff like that, why not, I said. So I think this was sent as a freebie to a group in one of the groups in Canada here. I can't be sure of that, but I'm plugging it anyway.
The creator on that is Amaranthum Talon.
Ah, yes, yes. Then that's that is somebody from Canada here, so that will probably be your answer. Now, I was out hunting around for various freebies and things like that on the grid, and I actually came across this thing, Wildlife Park Horse Avatar. And as horses go, this isn't bad for a complete avatar. As you can see, I haven't actually rezzed this. When you actually pick up the box, the horse is actually modelled on the box on top. So you know, it's technically it's a rezzable horse too. You just res it somewhere and drop the box into the ground so you can't see it. But it's actually an avatar. So if any of you feel like actually becoming a horse and trotting around all the wonderful landscapes here at MetaWorld and its adjacent sims, or anywhere else for that matter, then you may fancy the idea of doing it as a horse. So there we go. Wildlife Park Horse Avatar.
And the credit on that one goes to Alex Rhymes, Silly.
Fair enough.
Not listed as the creator, but noted in the information line on the item as the creator.
Right. No, it's not a bad one. Not a bad one for a sim, actually, especially. So. And finally, I'm coming to something I've actually had in my suitcase folder, or maybe in my local folder. I can't remember which. But you'll see it is a sort of suitcase, but it's also a sofa. And I've had it for quite a while. And I was endeavouring to sort out my inventory recently, which desperately needed doing. It's almost as bad as the Second Life one now. And I remember this, and I thought, oh, I'll res it here as a quirky little thing. It's quite nifty if you like zany things. It's a working sofa you can put down wherever you want to put down the sofa to sit. But it's I'm afraid you can't close the suitcase. But the idea is it's a suitcase, you know, so you carry your sofa around with you. I quite like that idea.
And that's was created by Thursday Ember.
Oh, that's Thursday's. Oh well, even better. Oh yes. So how could I miss that? So it's probably Thursday that gave it me. Okay, so in the absence of a greater event, that's a little bit of show and tell from me for this week. But now it's time to hand over to Tara properly for her take on the week. So over to you, Tara.
Oh, well, thank you, Mal, and greetings, everyone, from our LSIM of the U.S. Pacific Northwest. The hippocampus shoulder pet did generate a bit of a conversation about regional critters, and we won't entirely go there, but one of the events this week in Second Life was another get-together between Linden Lab staff and residents that was particularly invites went out to anybody who was a premium member, and one of the little premium goodies that they've been promoting this past week was the opportunity to pick up the Second Life 12th birthday special avatar ahead of the 12th birthday, and this avatar happens to be not a hippocampus but a velociraptor.
Oh.
And of course, apparently the fact that it was a velociraptor generated some monkey see, monkey do comments given the release of the Jurassic Park, whatever number it is.
I was just going to say that
this past week, yeah.
I think the velociraptor is about the least friendly of all the dinosaurs, isn't it?
Oh well, no, the velociraptor they run, and they're a smaller avatar. You're thinking of T-Rex.
Yeah, velociraptors. They're fast and hungry.
Yeah, no, but Tyrannosaurus Rex is the big guy.
Yeah, the big one.
It's the big guy.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yes. Sorry.
Anyway, yes, the opportunity to pick up the velociraptor ahead of the 12th birthday has ended, but they will be certainly available at the 12th birthday celebration, which opens a week from tomorrow. So that's kind of that's the big thing coming up here a week from today, and everyone who has patches is busily building, and they probably have about another 5 days to finish up whatever amazing and wonderful and weird things that they're creating.
I saw some blogs just this morning, Flickr photos of people's builds and things, and they were all saying 4 days countdown is on, and I thought, hang on, it
Oh
doesn't
yeah,
start on Wednesday, but yes, and it's this
yeah,
time next week it begins, wasn't it? Their big party.
yeah. Well, there's always the cutoff date for those who are building to when they have to be done.
Mm.
Both for the final inspections to make sure people haven't used too many prims or have too many breaking other various and sundry rules that go with what people can do in their exhibits. Anyway, but yeah, it's coming up very soon. And just another small item, and that is a happy birthday wish to Safia Wittershins.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, happy birthday, Safia.
Yeah, her birthday happens to be today, so you got to wish somebody a happy birthday when they're here. Of considerable media fame and the Blackened Mirror and
I'm working hard on the birthday at the moment.
yeah, and working hard on the birthday and
anything she gets told to do, basically, I think, is ridiculous.
yeah, and designing worlds and all that. So she's well deserving of a good birthday. So let me see here. There was something else. Oh yes, another item on premium membership in Second Life. They've currently running their what seems to be kind of an annual last chance, send in your dollar now. Even had a 50% off in the first billing when subscribing to the quarterly plan. And there's a new batch of premium freebie gift, which apparently has a summer theme and gets kind of mixed reviews on its usefulness. Apparently, it's got a surfboard in it, so if you have water or access to to a beach where you might be interested in surfing, the surfboard might be useful. Let's see, we do have a couple of Eat Your Vegetables items this week. There was probably the big item here is that they have rolled out to the main channels a server maintenance package which changes accessing group member lists for large groups, and this rolled out on Wednesday. And basically what this accomplishes is for groups of over 5,000, if you're in one of those, you will no longer be able to see the group list unless you are the group owner or have one of the roles that requires working, like being able to add members or evict members and that sort of thing.
I was going to say, who wants to scroll down a list of over 5,000 people?
Oh yeah, well exactly. But the problem has been that the feature, but without disabling it as they have done, it's meant that it's loading anyway in the background if you're in that group. And basically, apparently, when you get above that, when you get up to those numbers, it takes. Just a minute. Where's the note? I had a bunch of notes here. Tests have shown that in order for very large groups, i.e. tens of thousands of members to load, can take in the order of 10 or more minutes, during which time no other activities within the viewer can be carried out. So you really don't want to load that list. So, if you want to go, if you're in that sort of a group and you want to go and check notices, you've got to get past that group list real fast to prevent triggering that. Anyway, that's a fairly major change, and apparently is going to make some very positive difference. It only affects, somewhere I saw a number that was like 500 or 600 groups that actually are affected by this, that have over 5,000 people. And there turned up a couple of little glitches of not everybody who has a role, such as being able to invite people, that apparently this turned out to be a problem, and has been filed as a bug. And also users using older viewers are unable to leave groups with more than 5,000 members on regions running 15.0, 5.2, 8.302, 61. So,
thank you, Tara. I'm sure we'll all remember.
Yeah, I'm sure you really needed to know that detail. But anyway, if you're trying to get out of a group and it has more than 5,000 members and it won't let you, change regions. Yeah. Yes, indeed. And the other Eat Your Vegetable item will be of particular interest to those who, by intention or circumstance, are still using Windows XP
Oh, yeah.
or earlier versions of I think it's a 10 OS 10.7 on the Mac or before. These yeah, below 10.7 in OS 10.
Is this really called the obsolete platforms viewer, as Inara said? It's a great name.
Well, yeah, it is. What they've done is
Ooh.
okay. The basically the same. Neither Windows XP nor versions of OS X below 10.7 are regarded as supported products by either Microsoft or Apple. And that sometimes that's easier, but upgrading is sometimes easier said than done for any number of reasons. Yes, so the lab has issued a quote obsolete platform viewer, and it's in the viewer release channel, and it's under the other viewers. And what it is, it's the viewer that was released on May 8th. And it's there basically to take care of those folks who are having to run OS 10 version 10.7 below 10.7 or Windows XP.
I was actually laughing at this because I thought, well, when their Second Life 2 or Samsung or whatever it's called comes out, people will say, if I want to stay in Second Life, do I have to go to the obsolete platform viewer?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's something else.
It's based on the April 2015 maintenance viewer release.
Right.
And so it includes, a number of things. Apparently it's only going to be offered as long as it's reasonable. Should not be relied upon for long-term use, but rather as a means for those who prefer the official viewer and who use those OSs to continue to access Second Life until such time as they are in a position to update their systems, or until the viewer has to be withdrawn from use. So there you have it on that. So that's going to be a plus for some folks. I can certainly understand holding on to Windows XP, depending upon your circumstances, especially given the present state of things. But there you have it. There's that.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. The one item you didn't mention at all, High Fidelity issued a quarterly progress report this week. With various details on where things stand and are coming along. I'm not going to go into the details to that, but you can visit highfidelity.io and read the most recent blog post to get caught up on that. The Oculus Rift had a big press conference 2 days ago to reveal what their actual product is going to look like. And the headset itself definitely looks sleeker and more refined than either of the developer models did. Some interesting notes. It does have integrated audio for listening and a high quality internal microphone. And among the new designs, the advanced ergonomic design, one of those, okay, we got one of those buzz phrases in this, as opposed to improve the headset's overall balance and stability. It has a strap down the middle as well as around the back that apparently offloads the overall weight, allowing the Rift to rest comfortably. I'm quoting directly from their hype. There's also you can adjust the distance between the lenses for the most comfortable visual experience for you, and apparently they've improved it as far as being able to accommodate glasses. And yes, it will ship with the Xbox One controller. That's not an optional. It's that's going to be in the package.
Oh.
And then the other thing that they've announced is what they're calling Oculus Touch, which is a pair of tracked controllers that deliver hand presence. And now these are really odd little devices to look at the picture.
They sound like very much like the Motion sort of type thing.
No, these are things you hold in your hands, and there's one for each hand. And it's got a thumb thing on it, and a part that you hold in your palm, and there's a loop that goes around it, and then there's a cord that actually hangs off your wrist. And all I'm guessing is the cord is there, so if you happen to let loose of one, it doesn't fall on the floor and completely lose track of it. But I have to say, it's been commented that the visual appearance of somebody wearing a headset is pretty dorky. And I have to say, the picture of the guy wearing the new headset with these hand devices, it adds another factor to the dorkiness.
Yeah, I have to say that the moment you said it's got an extra strap, I was thinking, this thing isn't really going to be ubiquitous, and it doesn't need any straps at all. It's and the gadgets, it sounds to be like they've realised that they're only one part of the solution, so they're coming up with all sorts of other gadgets to just complicate things and try and make it a more total solution. But
yeah,
I actually think they're trying to. Well, currently people, when they're trying to use Oculus, and they're trying to get immersion, full body immersion, or at least upper torso immersion. Having control of the arms hand is very important. One of the first things people do when they put on the device is that they try to look at their hands, and it's very disconcerting to look and not see anything there. Now, what they're doing actually with these two handheld devices, basically, there's a camera that part of the Oculus solution is a camera that sits in front of the device. Now, you put this in front of your monitor, and it basically tracks does positional tracking for the headset. And they're using that, and what it tracks is IR, basically IR, small IR, call them bulbs, I don't know, LEDs, so they know your spin and position in space and so forth. And now they're using that existing solution to apply that to their handheld devices. So you could use the same solution to track the hands as well. So it's kind of a cheap way to allow, instead of having gloves or having Hydra controllers that have become somewhat popular as a high-end for tracking hand movements, that allows them to use the existing camera that they're already providing for the positional tracking for the headset, to use that for hand controls as well. So I assume, they haven't announced pricing for anything yet, but I assume this will be quite cheap, and they said it will be an open SDK, so other basically technology providers, product developers will be able to build their own handheld trackable objects, and I assume some of them will be gloves and other sort of things. If you compare this to the HTC Vive that put two laser trackers in the side of the room, this solution is actually a lot more compact. I don't see myself installing a laser device on the side of my room. I don't think I have two walls that are, a closet on one end, a window on another, kind of a bookshelf. I don't have a place to install it. But their solution, while still requiring you to sit in front of the computer, and their solution, the Oculus, or at least this current generation, is going to be built for sitting. You're not supposed to walk around with it, unlike the HTC Vive. Go ahead.
There's one curious thing, Ilan. I've mentioned this before, but I've long since had one of these lead motion devices, and what I find is that if I've got elbows on a table or something, and I could, I've got a web page open and it's like a book, and I can flip it, so I can use it very easily for those natural things like flipping pages, and even manipulating a bit of putty in one of their test programs. But what I find is that we don't naturally keep our hands, or rather our arms, in the air very, very much. I mean, we obviously lift them to gesture, and we, rest our wrists on tables and stuff like that. But I'm wondering actually just how willing, especially when it means having an object on your hand, people are going to be to actually use their hands more. There's quite a lot of muscular stress involved in holding hands in the air without any kind of support to manipulate things. And
my take on it is, well, if you're using an Oculus, due to their basically their angle, the field of view of their camera, you have to kind of take back your chair like a meter and a half from the camera itself. That used the current DK2 version of the Oculus. I don't know how the consumer version of their camera will behave, but as soon as you're walking away, so you're moving away, you can't really place your hands on your table. You have to kind of move back.
Right.
And at least, when I talk in the real world, I kind of tend to shake my hands all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, so with me.
So even though I'm sitting around, you're holding your hands together, moving them apart, making grand gestures, holding your heart, you're emoting, basically. So
Yeah.
even if you're sitting, I don't see myself rowing, like simulating rowing with this. That could probably be very tedious.
Yeah.
But natural conversation-wise, I actually see this as quite useful. I don't think they intend you to use it for everything. They provide the Xbox One controller just so you basically is the default, and that I assume will be used for most of the I call it the activities where you have to move around.
Yeah.
But when you need to manipulate things, it's a lot more natural to try to do it with two hands and trying to use a controller to simulate two hands. Or
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's where I see this. And if they make it cheap enough, and presumably those LED, the things they put on those are very cheap. So, and the most of the logic is in the camera itself. So, assuming they make this cheap enough and they open the specs so anyone can develop, gloves or whatever, basically allowing the market to provide the best controllers, but make it very cheap for them to do so because there's a camera and SDK already built in order to do this. Then I think you'll actually find things that are quite useful. You look at the alternatives that happen now. You have to buy things that attach to your Oculus in order to try to detect hand movement, and they have a limited field of view. And this allows you to have actually much better precision with hardware that are only installed on your desktop because you need it to run the Oculus. So I think that's actually quite a I wouldn't call it ingenious, that's going too far, but I think it's quite a nice way to use and to try to open it up to allow the development of multiple input devices, because I don't think they think this is the end all of multiple input devices or what they created right now.
Yeah, this is very much Philip's attitude with high fidelity too, isn't it? They're developing a platform, but the idea is, they're just keeping an eye on everything on the basis you're able to plug it in and choose what you plug in and how you interface for a given purpose.
Yeah, I think Oculus have taken a very good step towards enabling an ecosystem of hardware devices to interact with their platform, basically. Because they're making it much cheaper for everyone to develop these hardware solutions. All you have to do is put these little, infrared LED lights on your device. They connect to their SDK, and then you're done. You don't have to build sophisticated logic to try to do the tracking yourself. Have people install things that, people don't want to install things on their hardware. At best, you can make them use another controller if you can convince them it's good enough, and that's not. So I think it's somewhat like what Google did with the Google Cardboard, when they said, okay, here's a spec for something very, very cheap. And then you have dozens of creators and developers building all kinds of, solutions made from cardboard or plastic. And there you have the market competing for this very low end gateway. I don't know what to call it, a gateway.
Actually, that's probably a very good word, actually, because it probably always will be a gateway device.
Well, and also, if you keep in mind that, who's had their hands on it so far? Developers. Game fanatics who are geeky enough to be interested in working with developer kits. And so once this actually gets in, goes out as a commercial product release, then seeing what actually, which flags people salute, that when all these gadgets get run up flagpoles, is something that I think they're wise to to have a number of options. I mean, you look at, for example, the Leap Motion. Well, they've got software for that now that can see your fingers. if you've got your hands and you're moving your fingers, it'll it'll register that.
Yeah, I was
Another
referring
interesting.
to that earlier, but the problem with that is the limited field of view. Because if
Oh
you're
yeah.
if it goes
Yeah.
outside, let's say you're trying to do something. I want to show you. I fished something, a trout, and it's this big, and then you move your hands outside the field of view, and your hands, what happens? They either get
And they
stuck in place or
vanish.
they disappear. And that's
Yeah.
obviously a very bad user
Oh
experience.
sure.
You're not going to sell people on that. On the other hand, it's the Oculus tracking. I don't know how the field of view of this camera, but supposedly it's good enough. It's supposed, to an entire body motion of someone sitting a meter and a half from the camera. Presumably that will be far enough for you to stretch your hands as wide as they go and still be in a field of view of the camera, so you can be able to articulate all kind of movements that would be very hard to do, and do so at a very low cost, because you're just, and do so in a way that with an SDK that's simple for anyone to implement. So the hardware that I'm sure out of China will come dozens of solutions that will be much cheaper than what Oculus will sell, and I'm sure some of them will be better. So it's I think this entire approach, it's not as pure as having a camera watch your hands. You don't have to hold anything. You don't have to, but there you still have to install the camera, because that's not built in, and that's probably harder than just to hold something. Because if I tell someone you have to connect this to the USB and the power, even at that level, you probably lost 95% of your potential customers.
Sure, yeah.
And here you just hold this, and they say, okay, I'm holding it, now what? And you say, okay, move it around. Oh, that's my hand, right?
And it's got buttons on it, so you can do things and what have you. Now, one other thing I noticed with the Oculus Touch is unlike the issue with having to have your hands completely in the air. It looks to me like, hey, if you've got a chair that's got arms on it and you're wearing these things, chances are you can rest your elbow on the chair arms, and they're going to work just fine.
Yeah.
It's far more open to natural kind of movement. Looks like.
Exactly. Like I'm talking to you now, there's no one seeing me, but I'm moving my hands around. Now, if my avatar, if I were holding these devices, which I have no reason not to, because I keep on moving to reach the mouse. So if I were holding this in my hands and move them around, my avatar would be mimicking my movement, and that would provide a much more immersive kind of experience. Because I don't know if Mal is tapping his foot right now, but I know I am. But
it's oddly enough that isn't I do, oddly enough. So it's a suitable animation, but that is actually one side of it. I mentioned that I don't have my arms hanging up in the air all the while, and it's very hard, I find, to if I'm manipulating a piece of putty. I can do it physically. I'll probably have it on a desk and play around with it. But when I tried the Leap Motion demo one, your hands have to be in the air, and there's something about the tactile side of it that's actually missing. But again, I've always been very keen on the idea of gesture tracking, because if I could come on the show every week and sort of, it could be, because like you, I'm one of these people who sort of use a lot of facial expressions when I'm talking and gestures. And, to be able to capture that on camera, through an avatar would be amazing. I might have to be a bit more careful what I'm doing on the other side while I'm doing the show. But, the potential for greater immersion in that, I think, is fascinating. So that's one side I've always.
One last point, and then I'm going to toss it back to Mal, because Maria's been sitting there patiently today, and that is just related to that from High Fidelity, and their report is among their recent accomplishments is the ability to track and capture head movements and facial expressions with a regular webcam. As an alternative to needing a 3D camera. So that's related, and kind of in that same arena, but coming from High Fidelity, which of course is coming at a lot of things from a radically different perspective.
It's funny that back I think it was even as long ago as when Philip was still CEO of Second Life. I think it was Mitch Gabor, wasn't it? So they were working on the idea of these cameras that would be able to detect your motion and you could manipulate
Yeah,
your
it
avatar.
vanished. It just went dead silent. I
Yeah.
mean,
Um,
there was this kind of this expectation it was going to release in time for Christmas, and then it was kind of like, well, early
yeah.
January, and then silence.
There
So
there is still somewhere not updated a beta viewer for doing that, but it doesn't really
yeah,
work with normal webcams, unfortunately.
well, and it's been enough years that whatever that has gotten rolled into other stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah,
So
definitely on the back.
anyway,
Well,
that's it.
but
That's
you
it
know,
for
they
me.
use high fidelities using first-party SDKs for that. They didn't develop the actual mouth tracking and so forth themselves. They have quite a few selections that if you look at their DLLs, the way they actually research high fidelity at one point, and it's they're using, most of them are paid solutions. You can actually see like um, I'm blanking out here, of course, but there's some of their solutions are quite expensive to license. Some cost $1,000 for a license per year, which is not a big issue for a company that raised 17 million I've had until now. Um, but these solutions are actually available even to indie developers. At least the cheaper ones are, and some of them are quite good. And there are startups that are developing even better solution. There's a company called what's it? Why am I blanking out again? Anyways, they
Yeah.
do 2D avatars, and they recently blogged about a new company. They switched APIs from what High Fidelity is using to a new API that's by another startup in California that does it much better. Because if you try High Fidelity, if you move your face too much, it loses tracking. And that's part of the problems of that particular algorithm that the company they're using uses. But there are already better solutions for that. So that's something interesting. But you have to remember, you can't use that with an actual device as well, because the Oculus blocks you can't put the device on and track the mouth moving, for example, or eye
This
movement
is
while wearing the Oculus.
Yeah,
So
wasn't this the kind of thing that sort of affected what was it, Connect when it first came out? It's like we're talking virtual worlds about the field of view, but
Mhm.
it was the field of presence for these sensors. You could only do it if you were so many, not too close to the screen, but not too far away either, and certainly not off to the side too much this way or the other.
Have
So it
a
was,
Goldilocks special
yeah,
place where
it
everything works. Otherwise, it
yeah,
doesn't.
it locked you into a position rather than giving you the freedom to move, which was
Yeah,
sort of
well,
yeah,
those things are improving, but the big issue, and there are actually companies. One of them has, I don't think it's launched, but it's just was in last week. They were in the media, Fogon or something of the sort, sounds like, where they actually put cameras inside their head-mounted display, so it can track your iris movements.
yeah,
So it can see where you're looking and do all kinds of nice things with that. And that obviously enables you to do much more natural communication if you're talking to someone, instead of losing all the information of at least half their face, usually all their face, because the camera blocks, if you have a mounted camera in your display, usually the Oculus will block the field of view to even see your
yeah.
mouth, so that you won't be able
Uh,
to track that.
it's bad enough.
Um,
It's bad enough on webcam, to be honest. I frequently find myself talking, and the more you relax, the more I sort of lean back or lean to the side, and suddenly I
yeah,
realise the
exactly.
person I'm talking to can't see me.
Exactly. So there are obviously a lot of issues that have come with this, but solutions such as what Program said, and then Oculus has talked about doing, facial tracking as well. So these are ideas, these goals are obviously in their minds. There probably won't be in generation, first consumer version, but I guess 1 or 2 years down the road, they'll be built in and kind of be taken for granted already, and that already improved about the
I think they'll be hypergrid enabled anyway, so I thought I'd mention that. Okay, as Tara mentioned, time to hand over to Maria. So, Maria, if you give your sort of headlines, and I'll try and sort out what's happening with our calls in the background here.
Well, you guys already talked about the Oculus showing off their new headset, so I don't have to go into that. Um, the museum.
Okay, I'm back.
Sorry,
Hi,
welcome back, Ilan.
hi, Ilan.
Thank you.
Maria now.
I was just telling everybody that the Museo del Metaverso, which is on Craft, is looking for designers for a fashion exhibit this fall. And also on Craft, there's a photography competition, and that deadline for that is 3 days from now, on June 16th. And the theme is postcards from Craft. So get out there and share your creations. I did file a story on how to file DMCA takedown with a sample text that you can use. The reason for this is because some creators are still worried about OpenSim. They don't think that OpenSim grids take their concerns seriously, and they think that DMCA requires that you have a lawyer. It doesn't. All it requires is that you send off an email or fill in a form if the grid has a form. And it's really quick and easy to do. It takes a few minutes. And on the plus side, if you do it right, you can convert an infringing organization into a distribution channel. If somebody is distributing your content without your permission accidentally, because they thought it was a freebie, somebody else uploaded it, and they didn't mean to do that, you can ask them to replace it with, say, a link to their Kitely Market official store. And, thanks, Ilan, for setting up the Kitely Market. It's been so great for OpenSim. We now have a legal place for anybody on hundreds of grids to go and buy stuff. So great. I love that.
Thank you.
It is actually one of the best things that's happened in OpenSim in a long time, because content it was the number one thing on the wish list for OpenSim users according to our reader surveys. Some bad news on the grids is DigiWorlds is having an ownership issue.
Oh.
And what it looks like to me is that the company started out as a services company. They're providing design and consulting and development work back when they were Digital Worlds Group. Then they launched their own grid, DigiWorlds, and this grid became hugely popular very quickly. So they went from being a service company that was several people working together, doing development work on individual projects, to being all of a sudden owners of this huge asset, this grid with its customer base.
We had Mark on a few weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah. And this kind of structures that are good for, kind of a loosely affiliated group of developers isn't that great for running an individual grid. Yeah. So there were disputes among the partners about, how they're going to continue working with particular clients. None of that was not connected to the grid itself. And the two people who are the most involved with managing the grid, Terry Ford, who we know from Third Rock Grid, and I believe Terry's been on the show. And Mark Wiseman.
Terry, we know from here, he's the one who actually booted the sim before we started the show.
So that's true, yeah. So Terry is good at running the technology side of it. And Mark Wiseman, I believe, who does the business side, the marketing, and the customer support, they split off the grid as its own company, headquartered in the Netherlands, whereas the Digital Worlds Group, the development company, was headquartered in the United States. And one of the former partners, Michael Weitz, says that he's considering filing a lawsuit this week about how this happened. The other guys say he quit. on his own over the previous dispute. He says he didn't quit. So so it's a whole kind of internal kind of issue.
It is an internal thing, really.
It is an internal thing, yes. So hopefully the grid will survive all of this. But it's really unclear who's going to be doing hosting services, if anybody.
I must admit, I was having.
What jurisdiction is this in? How can you? Is there in the Netherlands and he's in the States? How? Where is this going? Going to be held?
I think if it's the parent company, it will be in the States. But if it's specific about the grid, then it will be in the Netherlands.
Well, well, they're saying that the grid wasn't legally sold off, so they're going to be filing it in the United States, I think. But it's.
I must admit, I think if it's an internal thing, we should let it rest. I was actually involved yesterday in a confidential conversation, so I'm not going to repeat it here. But we one of the issues that came up in this conversation was the possible conflict of interest between a grid owner who's also a grid service provider.
Yes.
You know, a lot of people are getting into OpenSim now, which is great. It's just what we want to know. But also a lot of people are maybe sort of rushing in, shall we say, without observing the niceties or checking, you know, the details or even understanding what they're doing. So I think, you know,
in theory, it shouldn't be a conflict of interest if a hosting provider also has their own grid. ZetaMex, for example, has a ZetaWorlds grid, but ZetaMex isn't really aggressively pushing ZetaWorlds. Whereas DigiWorlds is a very successful grid with a strong marketing effort. And so I can see that if I was a customer of DigiWorlds, do I want them also to be running my competing grid to me, right?
Well, as I understand it, DigiWorld's take on this is that they're principally a development grid. However, one thing that was transparently obvious is rather like the Canadian grid here, they were able, thinking it through, to offer very, very cheap prices. And I suspect that they've become very popular, just like Canada here has in many ways, because they are very affordable. And it may be that that side of it has taken off, and they've, as a result, some people behind the scenes think it's losing its development focus. So that is also a possibility, I think.
That could be it. Could be that the structure was just fell apart under the stresses of running a grid, which is very different from what they were offering before. The bottom line is, if you are considering a hosting provider, wait for everything to shake out first before making any long-term commitments. I mean, DigiWorlds was one of the top tier vendors in this space because the founders have excellent reputations and a long history in OpenSim and great prices. But given the fact that it's unclear what's going to happen with all this, you can wait a little while before jumping in. And also, if you are a resident of DigiWorld's grid and you have not yet made a backup of your stuff, which you should be doing on a regular basis anyway, this is a good time for you to do it. If you haven't done that yet. So protect yourself just in case something happens. You know, be ready to go to your backup plan. All right.
On the note to that, just if anybody, Mark or anybody involved in DigiWorlds and that side of it wants to get in touch and leave some comments or come on the show next week, do let us know. Let us know what's going on, basically. Yeah. Right.
And I do wish them a peaceful resolution to everything, that they're able to square everything away so that the grid continues, the hosting company continues, and that we're both and that they continue in a way that really benefits the OpenSim community. So wish you guys all the best. Okay, the YR Grid just sent me some new stats today. As you guys know, the middle of the month is coming up in a couple of days, and I'll be putting out a stats report. So I've asked some grids to send me data. And the YR grid, they're a gambling grid based in Hong Kong. They take Bitcoin. So there's a couple of things that set them apart. They released some data about where the users come from and what viewers they use. And this is interesting data. It was surprising to me. It wasn't surprising so much that the biggest chunk of the users are from the United States, because, you know, we Americans love to gamble and spend money. And the second largest group was from Saudi Arabia. Okay, they have money to spend too. But the third group was from Romania.
Oh, yes,
And Romania,
contrast.
and Romania was ahead of Germany and the United Kingdom and Canada. So Romania, that's weird. Then they also had their viewer statistics. Obviously, their own proprietary viewer was in first place because that's the one they recommend to everybody.
Yeah.
Second most popular was Singularity. It was ahead of Firestorm. And a couple months ago, I did another report about usage on the hypergrid, specifically Hyperica visitors, because I had access to those viewer logs. And there, Firestorm came out ahead. So maybe this is just a different user sample.
I suspect it may be the demographic they're analysing, because I absolutely love Firestorm. There's no getting away from that. I like that kind of interface, the SL2 or whatever it was called, interface, the buttons. It's clean and it's slick, and I love it. But as I've been working on the regions around here and stuff, I increasingly have to go into Singularity or into forgotten the name, a Cool Viewer, because they have functions in them that I can't find in Firestorm that are really necessary in OpenSim. So, you know, I imagine if I was a builder, developer, or something like that, I probably would never be in Firestorm. But I would think as a user, Firestorm is probably the best there is. So, you know, I suspect it varies by demographic.
Right. So some briefs. There's a couple of interesting Kickstarters. There's one for a $1,000 3D camera that's the size of a tennis ball, which is kind of cool. And there's another Kickstarter for a virtual reality glove that's doing pretty well. So you can check both of those out.
I've just thought of something. I've got to put this in. Do you know, if you've ever watched rock concerts where they, you know, this is years ago now, they started mounting little cameras on the heads of guitars. They took film from the side that showed you, like, the guitarist doing his posing and plucking his strings and stuff like that from a sort of funny angle. Well, I suddenly thought, you know, if you had a 3D camera mounted, you know, it was a tennis ball, you could say it to Wimbledon and they could play tennis from the viewpoint of the ball. Sorry,
people would get very nauseous, very.
I think they would, but just the idea. Sorry, Maria, I couldn't resist putting that in. It'd be fun for a while, a minute or two.
Yeah. So this is it's called the Sphericam, and they're already pretty good way towards their funding goal. Where is this? Anyway,
hyperconvergence.com.
Yes, it's.
That's where it is.
So the glove won is $62,000 to its $150,000 goal. And I'll just pull up how far along the Sphericam is. In other 3D video news, Industrial Light and Magic, in partnership with Lucasfilm, is launching a virtual world development company, and their first project is going to be a virtual reality version of Star Wars.
You know, I was wondering when I saw that report from you, because of course Lucasfilm is now a subsidiary of Walt Disney, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So presumably this venture is ultimately a Disney venture under that banner, so to speak, rather than an independent one by George Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It wasn't clear. That's why I was wondering. Yeah.
All right.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to that. I think that's really cool. And right. So Star Wars, they're going to do various projects related to that, and then there's a video that they released, and I've got that embedded. Okay. Another example of VR in the media space is the Stitchers VR app, which I downloaded from my iPhone. If you have a Google Cardboard device, like the one I have, which is $4 from Amazon, you can put that in and you can play this app. And Stitchers is a new procedural TV show where the idea is a detective can go into the mind of the dead person and see the last things they saw.
Oh, cool.
So in this app, you are actually in the middle of the crime scene and you're standing there and you're looking around, and the point of the game is to spot things that are clues to solve the mystery. So that was a very cute way of actually integrating 360 video and virtual reality into a game, and I thought that was really cool. So I recommend that you try it out. It's available for both the Android and for the iPhone. Okay. And the last thing that I have is that there's some scientists in China, and at the Chinese University and at the Microsoft Research Center in Beijing have put together a computer that can beat humans on an IQ test. And not the math and logic part of the IQ test. They've been able to beat us on that for a long time. But on the analogies part of the IQ test, which is apparently a breakthrough. And one of the problems they've been able to solve is that some words have multiple meanings in different settings. And you have to be able to understand how they're being used and how they all relate to each other. And they've figured out how to do that. And there's an article about it in the MIT Technology Review that's really cool, worth reading. And I saw that, and I'm thinking, intelligent agents in virtual reality that can interact with you that are now going to be smarter than you. Just what we needed.
Tries to teleport, whether it be via hypergrid or from inside the grid, into a world that's currently offline, the system automatically starts it. And if the person either waits a few seconds inside, if they're in Kitely, they'll wait a few seconds before the teleport initiates and they teleport into their destination. Or if they're coming through the hypergrid, they'll be transferred via Kitely transfer station world, which is specific to only people teleporting to that particular world. So you don't, if someone is, let's say, teaching a class and teleporting their kids into a classroom and someone else is teleporting into a BDSM world, they won't be sharing this transfer station. Each will get their own transfer station. They can start communicating and talking to each other privately while they wait for their destination to load up, which usually is only a few seconds in any case. And so it's the teleport time for this. If you take an entire time it takes the world to start up and the teleport, which are very fast and tightly, if you add all of that together, it's usually faster than the time it takes to hypergrid teleport between multiple grids that are always active. Because we put a lot of hardware resources behind things, and we've done a lot of optimization to our backend. We use standard OpenSim, but we have more than 400 patches which we apply to it, including an entire system for cloud-based asset and inventory, which are bottlenecks for teleports in particular, but for in-world performance as well. So there's quite a lot of that we've done to speed things up. And so while people say, well, it has to start up, if you look at the total time it takes you from pressing a button until you are at your destination, or can start communicating with the people heading towards your destination, in most cases, it's not in every case obviously, but in most cases it will take you less time in Kitely than it will take you between two always on grids. Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's Yeah,
how
go ahead.
about yeah? How about just out of I think I know the answer to this, but presumably because the worlds come on demand and they're all considered each to be worlds, there's no such. Just imagine for a second that every single grid on Kitely is actually online for some reason. That everybody who wants to be online at once. Presumably, there is not the same kind of system of coordinates where you can just walk across from one world to another because they're treated as separate worlds rather than regions. Or have I got that all wrong?
The Kitely worlds are, you can consider them like private islands on the Second Life grid or other grids. You can't fly between them, but you can teleport between them. And you can teleport between active Kitely region inside a active Kitely world and a region inside an inactive Kitely world.
Right.
And it will, for you, there'll just be a small delay. It's not that you're stopped. It just, you mentioned earlier that you're used to having worlds that are the regions that are offline. Well, in Kitely, the concept of offline is only temporary. It's offline until it's automatically turned on. You don't have.
It's funny. I remember the early days of OpenSim, and people like to shoot was some of the first people to jump out there and get their own, and you had to set it up on your own computer, and then you had to go to a site to register the coordinates that you wanted. And people were popping up, they would be, they'd power down overnight, try it again the next day, and of course they'd pop up with totally different coordinates. So there was just no way that they were in a fixed place. They were sort of randomly just been popping up at a time. And that was before the hypergrid and coordinates became all important. But it sort of reminds me of that because it didn't make anything dysfunctional at all. It simply meant that it wasn't in the traditional sense one large extended grid that just joined together.
That's one of the reasons we call these worlds, and Maria has an issue with that. She doesn't like our using the terminology.
Say islands. Say islands. You're saying islands have to tie here anyway.
Conceptually, they're worlds. They are worlds because they are separate. They have separate access controls. They have.
No, they don't. They have the same user data. They share the same user authentication mechanism. It's the same user database, the same assets database, the same inventories.
That's like saying that all the websites in the world that use Facebook Connect are the same website. They all share the same identities, Facebook identities. They all just share the same inventory access to the Facebook pictures or photographs. That is, I think, I don't know, it's not a red herring, but it's from a user's perspective, they have their own world. They control their access. They press the button to create a world. They got their world. They're not seeing worlds in other people. They're not in the horizon, no matter how far they set their camera. They can't see anyone anywhere else. If they make it private, no one visits their world. The fact they can teleport and the fact that it's implemented in a big grid instead of different grids is a technical implementation detail that is irrelevant for 99 point whatever percent of the population. They know they press the button to get a new world. They got a new world within a minute, and their world is separate from every other person's world. And the fact that whether we developed it as a hypergrid enabled mini grids or standalones running on EC2, or it's one big grid, that just means that we share a namespace for the users. So if you have Ilan Tochner, another person creates Ilan Tochner, they're going to be Ilan Tochner _2 or whatever, instead of having multiple people called Ilan Tochner under Kitely, which would be very confusing.
I think, I think we're moving into, there's a whole complex of possibilities here. I was talking to Roddy the other day here on Canada, and, saying that, another option, rather than getting more and more regions at one point, is you simply get your own server, which would be much faster than everything else, but it will still be in Canada, so to speak. And the important thing is that actually nobody visiting you will know the difference. They just want to know that they can teleport there and they can walk around between them, and they want the best performance that they can get. So the users, your visitors and things like that really don't care. whether all your regions are on one dedicated server, or whether it's a shared server, or even on different shared servers. As long as the system works.
Yeah, and if you look at hypergrid, the entire point of hypergrid is unifying all these grids into one big metaverse. Yeah. So you can have your Maria Karlov at Hyperica, and she can be traveling all over the place. And the fact whether it's running on the same, technically, she might be running on the same physical server that some Kitely region is. Well, not very likely with our setup, but she could be. And obviously, in hosting companies, that happens quite often. That people on different grids actually share a server, and they're contacting the same. They have the same IPs. They just they either running behind the net. So, but and the thing is, all of this is technical, and it's irrelevant for the general population. They know they have a user. They know they have it under a certain grid, and they know they have a certain level of control over what happens inside their world. And some people grids allow grid access and console access where people can do all kinds of things, shoot themselves in the foot. And there are hosting companies that don't allow that. They block that and say, okay, if you need something that's dangerous, ask us, because we don't want you to format your SIM, and then it's going to be you're going to have a hard time restoring that, and it's going to be difficult.
I think people taking regions on OpenSIMs or thinking of starting their own really do, a lot of them really do need to do a little bit more work about finding out the way some of that tech works, not as a consumer, but as somebody who wants to plunge into having their own. Sometimes it's not, the work involved in hosting your own is way too much. You won't do anything else and stuff like that. But most people don't need to know the background of that. They just need to know it works.
If you look, I got a question here, and I couldn't notice who the Skype who asked it, but on Kitely, for example, the difference between a Kitely world, which is a region and an island somewhere else on Kitely, and a grid you're teleporting to on the hypergrid, both of them will show inside your viewer on your grid map.
Yeah.
So, and both of them you could double click on the region teleport to. So the fact whether it's an offline Kitely world or it's a region inside a completely different region and completely irrelevant, all you need is the address. Yeah. Just like some people have .com initially, but now you have domain names with all kinds of extension, and people are used to that. They don't necessarily expect things to be under .com. Maybe.
Well, actually, if that is the very nature of the hypergrid itself, because most of us, we can't click on the hypergrid map as such. We, unless we're teleporting on a local grid map, we have to know the address. And then the teleport is simple, but you just, you need to know the address, because you can hunt on the map forever and it won't show up.
So for example, on Kitely, you can, if you zoom out enough, there's like 8 region distance between Kitely worlds. So if you zoom out enough, you'll see other, regions that belong to other worlds. And those get deleted, by the way, automatically. If someone deletes a world, presses a button to delete a world, those get deleted. And, a day later, they won't show up on the map. There's some delay because, creating the world map is resource consuming. We use Mesh3D for that.
Okay. Anyway, listen,
go ahead.
I'm looking at the clock here, and before we run out of time, I'd like to move on to the whole other thing. Which you're behind, and that is the Kitely Marketplace. As Maria mentioned earlier, that has totally revolutionized, to a great extent, the behavior of people on Hypergrid and OpenSIM, people wanting content. People didn't come here because they moaned they couldn't get content and stuff like that. And by opening a marketplace that not only serviced Kitely, although you'll have to give me some history on this, but also service the entire hypergrid effectively. You've kind of revolutionized the possibilities, because people who can't create stuff can now get stuff. That's what it amounts to. And it is, of course, hypergrid wide, which means that, it's not the right parallel, but I mean, if you can imagine all the grids on the hypergrid, and a marketplace serving them, then potentially that's just like a Second Life marketplace serving a vast number of regions like that. So how did you move into the marketplace space, and what are your visions for that, if any?
Okay, so vision was not just to be open some specific marketplace. I mean, we call it the metaverse marketplace. The goal is to be for high fidelity and other virtual worlds as well.
Mm.
And we already discussed like, if you look at the blog posts on our site, we already discussed a bit about what we intend to do in that area. Um, the goal is that if you have an avatar anywhere, you'll be able to go to Kitely Market. You specify right now, you say you can choose whether to deliver to your Kitely avatar or another avatar. If you choose another avatar, you can specify the grid and the avatar name. And basically, if we send over the delivery, we auto-box it and send it over to you. It arrives like someone giving it to you in world. So
Yeah.
you get an IM saying, press here to get it delivered. You press the link, it arrives in your inventory. And that is and inside Kitely there's direct delivery because we can do that. And so we deliver to all hypergrid enabled grids unless they specifically went out of their way to block us. And there's one such grid that did do that. But we also deliver, we allow people that are not grids that are not hypergrid enabled to make exceptions in order to allow delivery from Kitely Market.
Right.
And there are various grids that have done this, and they published it, and they were appeared in Maria's blog. So some of them are universities that didn't make any noise, so we're not going to out them. But the thing is that it really allows you to, as a consumer, you have access to a lot more content, and if you want to sell something to someone outside, let's say a closed garden ecosystem, then it really allows you to list your items once and sell them all over the place. For example, one of our, she's been getting more traction, a total avatar shop, Sunny Whitfield, she has her own online store, and she did manual delivery to multiple grids. And she's become quite active on Kitely Market, listing quite a few of her items. Even advertising in Kitely Market, and she'd be doing quite well business-wise, selling all over the place. Because if people want to come and get her items, it's much easier for her to just have them buy and get the items automatically delivered than having to manually go and deliver them. And if she needs to support, she just does it through the Kitely website instead of having to manage avatars all over the place. Or needing to do all kinds of things, and sometimes when you're transferring things over from grids, and sometimes they don't arrive as you wish, and so all of this is automated in Kitely Market, which was really our goal, which was to simplify and unify the entire metaverse into one big ecosystem. So if you're a merchant, you'll have easy access to all those customers on all of those multiple small grids, because otherwise you would only choose very few of those to support. And then if you're grid owners, and you don't have to be a huge one in order to get access to get great content. And if you're a consumer, you can choose, you can have your own standalone and have your own grid and have access to as much content as anyone else. So this has really kind of democratized and enabled I don't want to take too much credit, but it enables kind of the metaverse to evolve between having kind of converging into closed gardens, allowing this proliferation of smaller grids and standalones because they're not limited to the amount of content they have. They can get as much content as anyone else. And initially, if you saw the prices, we have people listing Kitely Market can decide whether they want content to be listed as Kitely only or exportable. And where initially content was Kitely only, that is really, as time gone by, merchants are coming to the understanding that they can make a lot better business if they open to the hypergrid, if they allow delivery. Because if you give people a chance, they'll buy from you. If you don't deliver and they can't get it any other way, they'll get it from the people who are not, distributing your content with your permission. So
it's something we discussed on the show a couple of times, actually. Do you have a phenomenon where let's say I want to, when I talk about clothes, it's stupid because I think clothes should be universally wearable wherever you're hypergridding. But, you want to buy a house, so it's for your own particular grid or something. But you want to rent houses on your grid. So you want to buy quite a few of the houses, or you want a copyable one. Do you find that people, creators, Well, I mean, I presume as a distributor, the creators choose the price and you take a commission on it, rather than
Yes.
you dictate the price. But do you find we're moving into a situation where people will say, I will pay so much for a a grid restricted, one copy, no copyable house for one price and maybe a different price for a copyable one that would allow me to build an estate of the same houses. You follow my drift?
Yes, exactly. So, sir, I want to answer you. There's Kitely Market has a concept called variations. We have the same product and might have variations for different colors. We have attributes, so
Yeah.
things can have different colors, different permissions for different variations of the same product, and they're only inside of the same product listing. So, for example, one common practice for merchants, and at least initially, they had a listing for Kitely only and exportable. And they had different prices and different permissions depending on which variation you bought.
Yeah.
Where initially the prices for exportable were significantly higher than Kitely only. But as time goes by and there's more competition, the prices for exportable are going down, and there's people just saying, well, skipping the Kitely only version and directly making things that only exportable. And the merchants doing that are getting the most business because there are just so many people in Kitely. We're one of the bigger grids in active user-wise, but compared to the high amount of people active on the hypergrid, it's not a significant enough number that would justify kind of a closed garden approach. So we really, you mentioned DigiWorld and Great Canadian Grid, and that they have a lot of people from those grids coming over to Kitely Market and delivering content to their avatars on those grids. They're not Kitely users. Their only user is just in order to be able to check out from the marketplace.
Yeah.
We automatically create an avatar for them. They never log in with it, which is fine because that's not our business is to enable them to get the content they want to the avatars that they want. We're not trying to get them as grid users for Kitely, and I think that is one of the reasons why. Where it's when we started off with Kitely Market, there was some contention about no grid should be managing this. It should be some independent form. And as time goes by, it's so that we're not biased. We're not trying to push you into becoming a Kitely user because you are a Kitely user if you're buying from our marketplace. That's the type of user we want you to be. You're buying from our marketplace.
Yeah, to be honest, that's to be honest, I don't know how you feel about this in retrospect, but one almost wishes that you'd chosen to call it a different name, so that the association with Kitely the Grid didn't confuse people. The metaverse marketplace.
You were asking about whether we're a consumer or an enterprise. There's branding is when you're trying to reach different type of markets or different type of business models. Having Kitely Market be prominent helps us on the enterprise side. When the consumer market side it's irrelevant because we don't try to leverage it. That's part of our strategy. If we try to leverage it, we wouldn't be able to sell to other grids. They would close off access to their users. And that would, that would defeat the point. The entire point was to unify everything into a single ecosystem.
Now, you mentioned earlier, and in fact you released the news some time ago, that you will be delivering to High Fidelity when it comes online. So the marketplace is already shaping into, a cross-platform marketplace, assuming we take OpenSim-derived worlds as one platform, if you see what I mean. High Fidelity will be another thing. You obviously don't deliver to Second Life, do you? Because
one of our goals, and we find that we will deliver to all open architectures and to the closed ones that basically we create some business relationship with. I don't think Linden Labs wants us delivering to their grid. Frankly, our marketplace and this is a lot more advanced than theirs.
Yeah, and they tend to just want everything under one golden roof. I mean,
it's understandable. They already stated that they want to change from high land costs to high sales commissions in their marketplace.
Yeah.
So that's part of their goal for what's it, seller? I forget the name of the new.
Really?
That's what they said. Yeah.
When?
Abby said that in one of the interviews. It was a video interview.
There's a
He
video.
said he
He's
said
trying
that
to.
they intend to go lower. He said we're currently taking a high rent, no, land sale, land taxes and low sales taxes, and we want to switch that to be lower land taxes and higher sales taxes.
Oh,
And
that's very interesting.
my
Yeah.
guess is what
I
that will
hadn't heard that
probably go
before.
for.
That
You know,
was a that was a
everyone's going to 40% commission. That's all the app stores. Oculus just announced it to 30%. I'm pretty sure that they'll just, you know, sell the line and be with the same 30% like everyone else is taking.
So
We're currently taking less, but you know, that's probably going to be the standard. It is probably that. You know, the App Store takes 40%. Facebook takes 30%. Unity takes 30%. So Second Life 2, or whatever they end up calling it, will take 30%. That would be my guess. They have no reason to take less because that's kind of a standard. They might be able to take more, but you know, I don't know how much they want to push that.
If I can get a word in here.
Yeah.
I was just going to comment. Ebbe did make a comment to that effect.
Uh-huh.
But my recollection was that it was more in reference to Second Life 2.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to.
Sansar, not to Second Life itself.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to. I didn't refer to Second Life 1. I said Second Life 2, whatever they call it. No, Second Life, I don't think they'll mess with it. They have, they're creating, you know, the existence of something that's potentially scaring the user base, creating, you know, FUD, that they're creating their own FUD against their own legacy cash cow. I don't think they'll want to mess with more parameters than just adding the existence of a new platform. They wouldn't change, you know, that's just too risky from their point of view. I wouldn't do it if I were them. It's kind of unless their new platform becomes so successful that they don't care about the old one anymore. I wouldn't, you know, I don't see them changing the existing parameters.
I imagine the Linden Marketplace will, to some extent, service both the New World and the Old World simultaneously as well. But remember, of course, Second Life, you know, it brought in the independent marketplaces that were the real successes, X3, SL, and the other one. They brought them in to create what is now the marketplace. It's sort of, you know, it's just like a takeover thing to keep it in-house. But are there any other, I mean, do you deliver to Inworlds, for example, and Avination, which are quite big closed grids?
We've had conversation with various closed grids that once we have something to announce, we'll announce it. There's nothing to announce at this point in time.
And I was going to ask the same question about other platforms. You've announced your. You've announced
High Fidelity. We researched quite a while back, and we follow it keenly. But it's too much in alpha land to be. You know, there's no inventory. There's nothing to deliver to. So it's, you know, it's they have to make. I'm sure they will, but it's just too immature to support a viable, you know, ecosystem at this time. They have their own very, very primitive marketplace, which just, you know, I call it almost just a few examples that you can render in the world. That's basically what it is, and you can't store them. You can't. They're missing too many components that we consider our basic, you know. Without which you can't really have an avatar on the metaverse. You might have some sort of game, but even for that, they're still missing too many parts. So I'm sure they'll get there, but you know, until they're close enough to become that it's somewhere in the closed horizon, that we won't be investing resources towards that.
How finally, because we are running out of time here. How about other? I mean, obviously. Enterprise activity is not something you always want to talk about, but are there any other platforms, even if you don't name them? I mean, I'm thinking of people like Fastpark and whatever, who are out of the public radar, but are working at the enterprise level, who you work with.
When we have something to announce, we'll announce it. You know, I'm very, very transparent when it comes to the consumer offering, our plans and so forth. But when it comes to enterprise, you know, I'm wearing a different hat.
Yeah, exactly. I know. That's why I said if. Yeah, it's always fascinating though because we often forget, even with the hybrid and open sim, but just as Maria will often tell us, what was your word for it? The hidden metaverse, or no, the dark metaverse. Maria called it for a
Yeah.
while. All these grids that we know are there, but they're not known publicly because they are not public grids. They're there for the enterprise or they're there for education and stuff like that. So, but we love keeping an eye on that stuff. Not to stick our noses into their business, but just to get to be aware. Just
I think that
the huge potential.
even looking at Kitely Market, and at existing Kitely Market and OpenSim, there's quite a few of the grids we deliver to that they're not public grids.
Yeah.
They might be hypergrid enabled, but they're not in Maria's list.
Yeah.
They don't advertise. They have their own closed user base. They're usually whitelisted. They don't let other people in. People might travel out. They don't block their users from traveling, but and they buy from Kitely Market because you can't get any merchants that way. You just only whitelist your users.
Yeah.
But that is part of the user base that we're servicing, and they call it dark. And it's kind of dark makes it sound almost like kind of illicit, but they're very serious, universities or schools, or I would call it even the white whenever it's so bright no one can see it. It's so I don't know, but anyway, they really are a lot of people. And even if you look, just getting kind of a sidetrack, but going back to the previous conversation, most Kitely worlds are private worlds. They're on the Kitely grid. You can click them. You can see them on the map. But you can click them, and it will tell you do not have access to this. That's not because the world is offline. It's because you're not on their whitelist.
Yeah.
They set an access control using our website that says we only allow these particular people in, and a lot of the Kitely worlds are like that. And kind of the region where we're between grid, well, not grid, but world hosters, virtual world service providers, and a grid. It's somewhat of a. It's not clear. You're not walking one big mainland. It's the user base might be sharing the same namespace, but a lot of it's segregated in many ways because people create their own groups and they don't want visitors.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a picture of the metaverse or the hypergrid just rolled inside Kitely. I think that's one of the ways we view it. We view it. Sorry.
Well, I hate to say it, but we're going to have to wrap. I warned you in advance that our half hours end up being 2. I suspect that with a bit of cropping and all our Skype problems this week, it's probably not as long as we think it is, but nevertheless, it is sort of time to wrap. Thank you very much for coming along, Ilan. It's good to have you on the show, and hopefully maybe we'll see you again sometime. Especially if there's any news coming up from Kitely that you think is enough to have a conversation about, let us know, and you'll be welcome.
I'll be happy to.
Okay. Now, as usual, just the way we close the show is just going around everybody for any closing thoughts they might have. Sort of anything exciting that's happened in last week or coming up, that we haven't talked about so far. And also, of course, in the case of Tara and Maria, if there's any questions hanging on that you have you wanted to ask Ilan, Ilan, which you didn't get in, maybe those two. I'll start with Maria. Maria.
So email me if you know of any grids. Or if there's any grid news or announcements too. So that's the big thing I'm working on this week. Also, with the help of Kathleen Watkins, also known as Serene Jewel. I don't know if I think we had her on. I've been able to successfully import a mesh from Damien Fate into Blender, take off the old rigging, put on a new rigging, export it, and uploaded it to OpenSim.
Boy, you're way ahead of me.
Yes, so I will be trying to recreate that process.
Yeah,
I was able to do it successfully once. I'm going to try to do it again. And if I do, I will write down all the steps, and I'm going to be writing a little post about how to do it. I'm
I
so
just say
proud.
that this is like a scientific process, isn't it? You're not quite sure until you know you can replicate it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I just have to ask a question, and that is, you do have to redo the rigging in order to import a DAE and change it when it's a garment.
But it only takes a few clicks. You don't have to actually do any work. What you do is there's a file you upload. You select the old rigging, delete it, and set it to parent to the new rigging. So there's like a few commands you have to press.
Okay.
But you don't have to think about it. There's nothing you have to do. You don't have to draw any connections.
You just have to, but you do have to reconnect rigging.
You do have to
the correct sort.
To do the command to connect the rigging, yes, but it's just one command.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
And it works. And it works, and I can put it on. I can wear it, and it moves with you. Now, if you edit the shape quite a bit, you might have to change the weights and stuff. So, that's way beyond my pay grade. But
hey, one thing at a time, you know.
I know. I think this was like a huge accomplishment all by itself. She took time off during the day. We did a Google Hangout. She pulled up her blender. I had up mine. She went through it. We had to go through it several times until we figured out what was wrong and we got it to work. Oh. But so.
Well, we're going to seg you here, I think, Mel, and I was going to say my accomplishment this week was a first pass on learning how to unwrap UV layers.
Oh, that sounds hard.
Well, it's really not as hard as it seems, but it's a necessary step if you have something like a garment or something else that isn't just simple plain surfaces. Or that you want.
Is that sentence alpha layers?
No. The UV map is the map of that the texture goes on.
Oh, right.
And it can default various ways, but when you've got an object that is that you want to have control over, where what edges are together and what edges are not, and how it flattens out. Then there are definitely some steps and tricks, and I've pass on learning that.
So that people like me buying a jumper don't accidentally end up with the female version.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't have anything to do with that. It doesn't have to do with the shape of the garment. It just has to do with the texture of the garment. Texture of the object.
Like on the sculpt, where
no, it's not for sculpts. It's strictly for mesh. If you've got a mesh object.
Yeah,
you can paint in Blender on it, but that's pretty rudimentary.
Yeah,
and you don't have the level of control you have when you create a UV map of that object and then take it into Photoshop or wherever and do your texture. So the UV map is how you produce the texture map to take into other software for texturing
so the texture stretches and goes in the right place when you put it on. I'm with
you. So that you can actually tell what you're working on. You don't just create. You have to unwrap it, and you have to unwrap it in a way that makes sense to you, so that you know what edges are joined and should be joined and like that. So,
Ilan, have you ever touched a mesh?
Thank you often. Just one thing I want to mention regarding Kitely Market. We recently blogged about an option that allows grid managers to have a link that the users can press to automatically configure their shopping cart to deliver to that grid, so they don't have to set up it skips a relatively simple step of providing the grid URI the first time they deliver to that grid, but it skips that stage. So if you give your users a link that they press and automatically sets that as their current grid to deliver to, so they only have to enter their username. and they're done delivering to your grid. It kind of
Right.
saves them on needing to explain how to set up delivery from Kitely Market to their grid. So that's something you can look for in our blog if you're a grid owner or if you have a standalone and you want to set that up easily. So there's that's specified. I think that's blog post just before the last one.
I think we'll be launching a companion show soon called Weekly Adventures in Mesh, actually, or something, because it's been a focus recently. But that is a point. In terms of Kitely Marketplace, obviously creators are working in everything from prims to sculpts to mesh. Have you seen a big increase of any sort in creators selling mesh-based products?
Yes, actually, there's where initially people were using more sculpties or just prims, we are seeing an increase in, I call it, creator sophistication.
Yeah.
Where before kind of the last few months, there were various people selling mesh, and they usually tended to sell better because that's we get the lower limbed impact for better visuals.
Yeah.
With mesh, and that's something always desirable. The people who use creating with mesh, correlation with, I don't know, call it professionalism or the ability to people spending time to learn mesh tend to be more of the people who have the ability to create more advanced things just because the people doing it professionally spend time to learn the more advanced tools. That I don't think it's a cause and effect, but there is definitely a correlation.
I think in some respects it's become a buzzword now too. Obviously, it is superior, but of course, when you think of Second Life 2 when it comes and High Fidelity, mesh is going to be all important. And I think the people, I can see, the first people getting into this and saying products made in mesh have a head start, so to speak. As if people go through the marketplace, they go see, 5 out of 100 do mesh. So if they're interested in mesh, they're going to go to them. So, but it does seem to be a booming. I just try to get a feel for how much mesh creation is a boom industry in the sector, so to speak.
I can actually do a quick query here because people who build with mesh usually mention mesh in their somewhere in the content.
Yes. I'm a mesh person. Come to me.
So I'm doing a search for mesh here. Let's see. Search for mesh. There are 2,865 variations with mesh now out of how many do I have right now? Okay, I'll choose adult as well. Out of almost 9,400. So it's about 20-something%. So that and that's much higher than it was earlier. It's just and we are seeing this increase, and I think we'll see a trend like we did with the export permission, where it's become you almost don't see people coming to the marketplace not selling with export, and you are seeing more and more mesh, and I think that those trends will be it just.
I think that's highly significant, actually. I mean, because that is 20% of the total. That obviously includes stuff that has been on the marketplace since before anybody was doing mesh. So it's a good percentage.
If you look at the sales, those the revenue from those items is much higher than the revenue from prims and sculpt. So you are. If you want to make the most money, sell something mesh exportable in Kitely Market. That would be your best bet currently in OpenSim. That would give you the widest audience and the most attractive, I think, if you look at the search terms. Because people are searching for mesh and they are looking for things that they can take with them when they hypergrid. And I think that is a good takeaway. Interesting merchants. If you want to maximize your sales, and if you're selling in Inworlds or Nation or any one of the closed grids, you have a lot more potential buyers in the hypergrids than you do with the enclosed grids.
Yeah.
Because there are more active users in the hypergrids than there are in closed grids, and they do buy from Kitely Market, so you have an easy place.
And
You don't have, you don't have to pay us anything. It's free. There's no listing cost. There's no upload cost. You go to one of the free sandboxes, upload your content into your Kitely avatar inventory, and from that you upload it into Kitely Market. Just add a bit of metadata, add your PayPal, and just wait to get money. Basically.
I also suspect, that if creators are actually serious in creating mesh and maybe creating new things, especially that mesh will enable, the market on the hypergrid on OpenSim is possibly better than Second Life, because I think a lot of the population out here, as I use the expression, are actually tend to be on the more leading edge of things and be more susceptible to new formats and things.
Actually,
I would disagree with you on that.
Yeah, okay. And there's an excellent reason for that too. Right now, there's two things that you cannot copy bot, and that is scripts and rigged meshes, mesh rigging. So if you sell something on a hypergrid, like a regular clothing or any kind of regular object, people can copy bot it off a closed grid or off a hypergrid enabled grid equally well. However, if you're on a hypergrid and you have an object that has rigged mesh or a script in it, somebody could take it to their own personal grid where they have access to the backend database and God powers, and they can go into the database and change the settings, change the permissions, and unlock that rigging and unlock that scripting. And those two things can be very difficult to create, scripting in particular, but also rigging, as I found out.
Yeah.
And so those are the only two things that have an advantage in terms of security for being sold on a closed grid.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, interesting point too. So the message to creators out there is learn mesh, protect your copyright by making it mesh and watermarking it, and sell it on the Kitely Market, of course.
Yeah, that would be a great way. I think one of the things to focus on is maximizing your revenue, your sales, and not trying to minimize theft. The best way to minimize theft is don't sell to anyone. Don't let anyone see your content in the viewer, because they can copy bot it. That is obvious. It's absurd, but that's it's taking the approach that some people are taking. The place where most content is copy botted is from inside Second Life.
Right.
Whether it's used in Second Life or used in OpenSim, it's copied from Second Life. And obviously those people, everyone sells in Second Life, everyone in this ecosystem. So if you're already selling in Second Life, and if you want to maximize your sales, you already have the content, upload it into Kitely Market, connect it to your PayPal account. It's fire and forget mostly. If no one buying from you, you have no customer support. If they are buying from you, most likely they got their content. And if it's okay, they won't be asking you any questions. And so it's relatively easy way to extend your user base. And if you're fearing copy botting, don't sell anywhere, because that's really your only way to prevent it from being copy botted. There are issues with scripts. Maria is correct that there are script creators have a harder time accepting this, because if you deliver a script, it can be taken easier, in a more convenient way. Via delivery to a hypergrid enabled grid that sits in some person's home computer, and he gets themselves grid mode. But the people who tend to steal content don't usually buy it first. So it's there's they might, maybe if they really, really, really want your script, they'll pay you for it. But but most likely they won't. It's a different kind of user that takes out their wallet and pays. That user is more likely not going to be the one stealing from you.
Yeah, I mean, where there's a market, there will always be some crooks, but most people are honest, and more to the point, even the crooks aren't going to do it unless it's cost effective. So if you take steps to make it not cost effective, then you should be fine. I mean, it's just like real life. There's nothing special about this that is unique to metaverse. Yeah.
There's some music being sold online without DRM, where you can easily Google any song and find the pirated MP3 of it. But
Yes.
people still buy billions and billions of tracks from the iStore, or sorry, iTunes, and the
Yeah.
people buy it from Google Play, and they buy music. It's not about getting easy access. It's about giving your potential customers an easy way to acquire your content.
Yeah.
If you don't give them away, the only option is to try to get it from illegal ways, even without knowing if they're illegal, because they might look, legit at some store. But if there is a venue that sells legal content, people know about it and focus on buying from it, then it really starves out all these potential distribution channels for people who want to sell unlicensed content.
Yeah.
So that was one of our goals with Kitely Market, trying to unify it all and making it easier to monetize content.
Yeah, people undoubtedly prefer to, like they have their Amazon account or their iTunes account and things. They're the convenience factor, and they're a known customer, and it's there's everything is easy peasy. They just press buttons and go for it. Whereas to find the pirate content and stuff is hard work. It's probably not worth the effort, So anyway, we must wrap. I'm sure this conversation could go on forever, but we better close now. So we will be back again next week with another exciting show, no doubt. Once again, I'd like to thank everybody who's here today. Thank you especially to Ilan. Thank you again for being here. Thank you once already, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you as ever to Maria Kovalov from Hypergrid Business.
Always a pleasure being here, Mal.
And thank you, of course, to Tora from Tora. Yes.
Anytime.
And thank you for
Most
me.
welcome.
And thank you for me, of course. Okay, so I wish you the usual, folks. I wish you a very good morning, very good evening, very good afternoon, or indeed a very good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And we will return next week. Bye for now.